He said he'd pay an extra $40 if I could bring it after dark. I needed the money, so I said sure. That was the first moment I should have stopped. I didn't. My name is Derek. I was 26, living in a one-bedroom outside Knoxville, East Tennessee. I'd been laid off from a warehouse job in early October, and I was about 3 weeks from not making rent. I'd been going through the apartment room by room, selling off anything I could stand to lose. A guitar amp, a bike I hadn't ridden in 2 years, a box of tools I kept telling myself I'd use someday. The speaker was one of the last things I had with any real value. I'd listed it on Facebook Marketplace, a Klipsch RF7, floor standing, clean shape, one of a pair I'd bought years earlier when I thought I was going to get serious about music. I never did. I listed it for $280 and figured I'd negotiate down to $250. Within 2 hours I had 6 inquiries. Most of them were lowball offers. One guy offered $150 and a trade for something he never named. I ignored that. The one I responded to was a man named Gary. His profile had a photo, a handful of friends, nothing that stood out. He asked real questions about the speaker's condition. He offered full asking price, $280 cash. We agreed on the next evening. Then around 9 that night he sent another message. Something had come up. Could we push to Thursday? That was fine. I said yes. Thursday morning he confirmed the address, a neighborhood off Clinton Highway on the north side of Knoxville. I looked it up. Normal streets, houses, nothing unusual. I told him I'd be there around 7. At 5:30 he messaged again. The address had changed. He said his brother-in-law was visiting and things were crowded at the house. He gave me a new address, same neighborhood, he said. I typed it in. It was not the same neighborhood. It was off Rutledge Pike, which runs northeast out of the city toward Granger County. The map showed the road narrowing past a certain point. The pin sat about 4 miles past the last gas station I recognized. I zoomed in, zoomed back out. There were no subdivisions out there, no strip malls. Nothing that read as the kind of place someone gets crowded out of by a visiting relative and relocates a transaction to. Just the long dark run of Rutledge Pike bending east, a smaller road branching off it, and then the pin. I told myself it was probably fine. People live out that way. I was just selling a speaker. I loaded the Klipsch into the back of my Tacoma and headed out around 6:45. I stopped at a Circle K on Clinton Highway and filled the tank. $22 on the card I was trying not to use. The pump was slow. The fluorescent light above the canopy had a flicker to it. It was mid-November and the temperature had dropped into the low 40s. My breath showed in the air. Standing there in the cold, I looked at the address again on my phone. I zoomed out on the map. There was nothing commercial out there, no cross streets with readable names. Just a long road that bent east and seemed to stop. I got back in the truck, sat there for about 30 seconds. I texted Gary, "Hey, just confirming the new address, that's correct." He wrote back immediately. "Yes, can you make it by dark? Wife goes to bed early." That was a strange thing to say. I almost asked why that mattered. I didn't. I pulled out and headed northeast on Rutledge Pike. The further I drove, the more the road changed. It wasn't dramatic. The streetlights just got farther apart. The houses got set back farther from the road. The pavement was older out here, patched in long, uneven strips, and the sound under my tires went from a smooth hiss to something rougher. By the time I passed the Shell station, the map marked as my last landmark, there were no businesses at all. Just tree line and dark fields and driveways I couldn't see the end of. My phone showed 2 more miles. I passed a road on my left and something made me glance down it. A car was parked about 50 feet in, no headlights, just sitting there, pointed toward Rutledge Pike like it was waiting to pull out. I kept driving. I watched the rear view. A few seconds later, headlights came on behind me. The car pulled out and turned onto Rutledge Pike. It was moving at the same speed I was, not fast, not slow, holding the same gap. I told myself it was someone who lived out here. This was a road people lived on. I turned onto the street the map directed me to. Single lane, cracked asphalt, trees on both sides pressing in close. My mirrors almost clipped branches. My headlights caught a yellow sign. Dead end. Below it, someone had zip-tied a length of rusted chain to the post, the kind used for a gate. There was no gate attached to anything. It was just hanging there. The car behind me turned too. I stopped. I cut my headlights and sat in the dark with the engine running. The car behind me slowed. It pulled off onto the dirt shoulder about 100 feet back and stopped. Its headlights stayed on, pointed straight at my rear window. The light filled the cab and made the mirrors useless, too much glare to see anything but the source. I looked ahead, my phone said zero point 0.3 miles to the destination. The trees on both sides were dense. Without my headlights on, the road between them had gone completely dark. I couldn't see where it bent. I couldn't see what was at the end of it. I did not move. I turned the radio off. I hadn't realized it was on. In the silence, I could hear the engine idling, the heat fan running low and very faintly, the sound of another engine behind me. The sedan running, waiting. After about a minute, my phone buzzed. Gary, almost here. I typed back, just parking, grabbing the speaker out of the back. I did not get out of the truck. I sat there watching that car in the rear view. It didn't move. No one got out. It just sat there with its lights on, pointed at me. I thought about what I actually knew. I was on a dead-end road off Rutledge Pike. The road number on the sign at the junction had been 3531. I was 26 years old, alone in a truck with a $280 speaker in the bed. My phone had 2 bars of signal. There was a car behind me that had been parked dark on a side road, pulled out when I passed, followed me here, and stopped. No one had gotten out. It had been sitting there for over a minute. Then Gary called. I let it ring. 4 rings, voicemail. He called again. I let that one ring too. Then a text, "Hey, you okay?" I thought about pulling forward, finishing the drive to the address. Whoever was waiting there, whatever the house looked like. I thought about the $280 Gary was going to pay me. I thought about the $40 bonus for coming after dark, which now felt like exactly what it was. I thought about how the first address had been a normal neighborhood, and the second one was a dead-end road in Granger County, with a car that had been parked in the dark and pulled out when I did. I put the Tacoma in reverse. I kept my lights off and backed slowly toward the car on the shoulder. I wanted to see if it would move. It didn't. It just sat there. I got close enough to make out that it was a dark-colored sedan, 4-door, something American, maybe 10 or 15 years old. I couldn't tell the make. One of the headlights was aimed slightly lower than the other. I couldn't see anyone inside clearly. The glare was too much. The windshield had a slight tint, but there was a shape in the front seat, someone behind the glass, not moving. I pulled forward, cut the wheel hard, and did a 3-point turn in the narrow road. The front right tire went off the asphalt and found soft ground. I felt the truck sink slightly before I corrected. I flipped my headlights back on and drove past the sedan at normal speed. Not slow, not rushing. I didn't want to look like I was running. The face in the driver's seat turned to watch me go. I got back to Rutledge Pike and drove toward Knoxville. I didn't look at my phone until I was back in range of streetlights. By then, Gary had sent 3 more messages and called twice more. The last text said, "Where did you go? My brother came out to help carry." I didn't answer. I drove to my apartment and sat in the parking lot for a while before going inside. I still had the speaker in the truck. The cold had worked through my jacket while I was sitting there, and I hadn't noticed until I stepped out. My hands were stiff on the steering wheel. I sat under the yellow glow of the one working light in that corner of the lot for probably 20 minutes. I didn't go inside until another tenant walked past and nodded at me like it was a completely ordinary Thursday night. The next morning I checked Gary's profile. It was gone. The conversation was still in my messenger, but the account attached to it had been deactivated or deleted. No photo, no name, just a gray circle where his picture had been. I thought about calling the Knox County Sheriff's Office. I did call eventually. A couple of days later, the deputy I spoke to was patient. He took down the address, the road number, the phone number Gary had called from, the description of the sedan. He didn't sound surprised. He said they'd had a few calls about similar situations in the past year or so. Same general pattern, a sale listing, a changed address, a remote location. He said in most cases they couldn't do anything because technically nothing had happened. He said I'd done the right thing by leaving. I kept the speaker for another month, eventually sold it to a guy in the Guitar Center parking lot off Kingston Pike, middle of a Saturday afternoon, other people all around. $240, I took the discount without arguing. I still think about that sedan, the way it waited, the way the face turned to watch me drive past. I think about what was at the end of that road. He told me he'd pay an extra $40 if I could bring it after dark. I needed the money, so I said sure. My name is Derek. I was 26 at the time, working part-time at a lumber yard outside of Cookeville, Tennessee. My roommate had just moved out and taken his half of the rent with him. I had about 3 weeks before I came up short, so I did what everyone does. I started listing things. The big item was a Maytag top loader. About 8 years old, ran fine. My new place had machines in the basement, so I had no real reason to hold on to it. I put it on Facebook Marketplace for $120, pickup only U-Haul. The first two inquiries ghosted me. The third one came in on a Tuesday afternoon. The message said his name was Gary, he needed a washer bad, price was fine, he had a truck, normal stuff. We went back and forth a few times over the afternoon, short messages, polite, nothing strange about them. He asked if it still worked. I said yes. He asked the dimensions. I gave them. We agreed on Thursday evening around 6. I gave him my address. Then Thursday morning he messaged again. Something had come up, he couldn't make it to my place anymore. Could I bring it to him? He'd pay the extra 40 for the trouble, 160 cash. I almost said no, the listing said pickup only, but 160 was 160. I said okay, where? He sent an address, I put it into my phone. The app said it was about 14 miles east of my apartment, past the county line on a road called Hatcher Mill Road. I didn't know that road, I figured it was some rural neighborhood. There are a lot of those out that way, older houses set back from the road, people who have lived in the same county their whole lives. I loaded the washer into my uncle's 2009 F-250. I didn't own anything big enough and left around 7:30. It gets dark early in November. By the time I hit the edge of town, the sky was already gray-black. Temperature had dropped fast the way it does in the Tennessee hills when there's no cloud cover. I had the heat on low. The radio was on, nothing dramatic, just a guy moving an appliance. About 20 minutes in, Gary messaged me again. Take the left fork at the split, not the right. Right fork is a dead end. I was already on Hatcher Mill. I slowed down and looked at my phone at a stop sign. That fork wasn't on my map. The road ahead just looked like a road. I texted back and asked which split he meant. He said I'd know it when I saw it. That was the first time my stomach moved. I kept driving, the houses thinned out fast. Within a mile there were no houses at all, just tree line on both sides and the road going straight into the dark. No streetlights, no reflectors on the shoulder markers, nothing. My headlights carved maybe 100 feet ahead of me, and beyond that was just black. The trees were tall and bare-branched, it being November, and they pressed in close enough that I could see individual trunks flickering past in my peripheral vision. The road had a smell to it. Wet leaves, clay, something faintly organic. There was a creek nearby. I could feel the cold off it seeping through the door seam. Then my headlights hit a fork I hadn't been expecting. Unmarked, no mailboxes on either side, no signage of any kind, just pavement splitting into two lanes of dark. I sat there with the truck idling. I took the left. The road went unpaved about a quarter-mile in. My headlights bounced. The washer shifted in the bed and clanked against the tie-down. I drove slow. Branches brushed the side mirrors. The sound of gravel under the tires was loud in a way that felt exposed, the kind of sound that announces exactly where you are to anyone listening. I found myself reaching over and turning off the radio without really deciding to. Then I saw the house. Single-story, small, sitting in a clearing, one window glowing yellow, no porch light, no outdoor lighting at all. The clearing was bare dirt and dead grass, pale in my headlights with tree line closing in on three sides. One vehicle parked beside the house, an older Jeep Cherokee, dark-colored. One vehicle, Gary said he had a truck. That wasn't a truck. I pulled in slow and sat with my headlights on the front of the house. The curtain in the lit window moved. A man came out the front door, tall, mid-40s, dark jacket. He walked toward me with his hands in his pockets. I rolled my window down halfway. Cold air came through immediately. It smelled like wood smoke and damp earth and something else I couldn't name, something like a building that had been shut up for a long time. "You Derek," he said. "Yeah, Gary." He nodded but didn't say anything else. He walked around to the bed of the truck and looked at the washer, just looked at it, stood there for a few seconds longer than made any sense. He wasn't checking the condition. He wasn't looking for damage. He just stood there with his hands still in his pockets, staring at the machine. "I'll need some help getting it inside," he said. "I've got a dolly," I said. "Come on in first, I got your cash inside." Something about the way he said that stopped me. Not "come get your cash, come in," like the point was getting me through the door. I said sure, I'd be right there. Let me grab the dolly from behind the seat. I opened the truck door and stepped down. Gravel crunched under my boots. I walked to the rear door and pulled it open like I was looking for something. I wasn't looking for anything. I was thinking. My phone was in my hand, 3 bars. The nearest gas station, the Circle K on Route 70, was probably 15 minutes away on a good road, and I was a quarter mile off a fork that wasn't on any map. I thought about that, not in a panicked way, just clearly. I looked back at the house. Gary was at the front door. He hadn't gone inside. He was standing there watching me. There was someone else in the doorway behind him. Not fully visible, just a shape. Someone standing back in the dark of the hall, watching through the screen door, completely still, not shifting their weight, not leaning to see better, just standing there in the dark the way a person stands when they've been waiting for some time and they're used to it. Gary hadn't mentioned anyone else, not once. And then it all arrived at the same time, the way it sometimes does when you've been ignoring something and your brain finally forces you to look. The After Dark request, the last-minute address change, the road I didn't know, the fork with no map marker, no porch light, a truck he said he had that wasn't here, cash inside, come in first, and now a second person, unmentioned, motionless, watching me through a screen. This wasn't about a washer. I don't know exactly what it was, I'm not going to pretend I do, but I know what I felt standing in that dirt clearing in Putnam County at 8 o'clock at night, and what I felt was that I needed to leave. Not in a minute, not after a polite goodbye, right then. I patted my jacket pocket. I made a face like I'd just remembered something. Hey, sorry, I said. My girlfriend just texted. She has my location on and she's calling me right now. I have to take this. Gary didn't move. I held the phone up to my ear. I wasn't on a call with anyone. I said loud enough for him to hear, yeah, I'm just dropping off the washer. I'll be home soon. Normal volume, a little inconvenienced, like any guy wrapping up an errand. I walked back to the driver's door, slow, deliberate, like someone finishing a normal phone call before getting into a car normally. I got in, shut the door, locked it. Gary took 2 steps toward the truck. He wasn't running, he wasn't rushing. He just stepped off the porch and moved toward me at a pace I can only describe as unhurried, like he had done this before and knew not to rush. Behind him, the shape in the hallway still hadn't moved. That was the last thing I saw before I put the truck in reverse. I didn't turn around. I reversed the whole quarter-mile back down that unpaved road in the dark. The washer slammed and rattled in the bed. A branch swept across the windshield and I flinched, but I kept going. When I hit the paved fork, I swung around and I drove. I didn't breathe right until I could see the glow of Route 70 in the distance, the gas station signage burning orange against the sky. I stopped at the Circle K and sat in the parking lot under the lights for about 10 minutes, hands still on the wheel, engine still running. Inside the store, a woman was buying a coffee and talking on her phone, and everything about her was aggressively, beautifully normal. I drove home with the washer still in the truck. That night I went back to the Facebook Marketplace conversation. Gary's profile was gone, deactivated, deleted, whatever you do when you want to disappear. I took screenshots of the messages first, then I called the Putnam County Sheriff's non-emergency line. The deputy went quiet when I gave him the address on Hatcher Mill Road. Then he asked me to repeat it. I did. He said that address had come up before. He didn't tell me in what context. He took my information, said someone would follow up. No one ever called me back. I don't know if that means nothing happened, or if it means they already knew what was happening and my call was just one more in a series. 2 weeks later, I listed the washer again. New listing, pickup only. I met the buyer in the Walmart parking lot off Route 111 with the tailgate down. The whole transaction took 4 minutes in broad daylight. I got my $120, no extras. I still think about that shape in the doorway, standing back in the dark, not moving, just watching through the screen. Meet in public every single time. When the second guy got in the back seat, the rider hadn't said a word to me about it. My name is Cal. Back then I drove for Lyft part-time Tuesday through Thursday nights, usually wrapping up around 2 in the morning. I had a day job doing HVAC work in the Atlanta metro. The rideshare money was just extra, gas, groceries, whatever. I drove a 2019 Honda Pilot, dark gray, kept it clean, 4.9 rating. I was proud of that. Most rides were fine, airport runs, Barclays pickups, the occasional college kid who fell asleep before we hit the highway. You get used to the rhythms, you get comfortable. That's the part I think about now, how comfortable I was. It was a Wednesday in late October. There'd been rain earlier and the street still had that wet mirror look under the streetlights. The temperature had dropped into the low 50s, that damp Georgia cold that goes straight through a jacket. I just dropped someone at a hotel off I-285. I was sitting in the parking lot with a gas station coffee going cold in the cup holder when the next ping came through. The name on the request was Marcus, 4.7 stars. The pickup was on a side street in Decatur, off Commerce Drive near the old rail corridor, about 12 minutes out. I accepted and drove over. He was standing on the curb when I pulled up, late 20s, maybe 30, dark jacket, backpack, phone out. He confirmed my name through the window and got in the back, normal. He He smelled like cigarettes and something underneath, something chemical and faintly sweet, like a cleaning product used on the wrong surface. I noticed it and let it go. People carry smells. I pulled up the route. The destination was an address out past Stone Mountain, maybe 25 minutes east on US 78. A residential street, quiet neighborhood, nothing strange about it. We were 3 minutes in when I noticed the first thing. I glanced at the app to check the route and the destination had changed. Not by much, a different street, parallel to the original, maybe 2 blocks over. I figured he'd updated it. People do that. Hey, did you change the drop-off? I asked. He was looking at his phone. Yeah, he said, just the one word. I kept driving. On US 78 heading east. He didn't talk, which was fine. Not everyone wants to talk. I had the radio low, some late-night sports show, the host's voice just a murmur under the sound of the rain. The rain had picked back up, light but steady, the kind that hisses more than it patters. The road east of the city thins out fast. Fewer lights, longer gaps between exits, the tree line closing in on both sides. I knew this stretch from HVAC runs out to Gwinnett. I knew how empty it got. Around the 15-minute mark, the destination changed again. This time it moved further, not a residential street anymore. The address the app was now showing was out past the suburb line, on a county road I didn't know. I could see on the map that it dead-ended somewhere in the tree coverage east of the city. No business name attached to it, no house marker, just a pin sitting at the end of a road called Henley Mill Cut. I slowed down a little without really thinking about it. Hey, the drop-off changed again, I said. It's showing a county road now, is that right? He didn't look up from his phone. Keep going. That was the moment something shifted. Not a full alarm, not yet, just a wrong note. Keep going isn't a yes or a no. It doesn't answer the question, it tells you to stop asking. I kept driving. I turned the radio off. The silence without the radio was different. I could hear the rain on the roof, the low whine of tires on wet asphalt, and behind me almost nothing. No shifting in the seat, no clearing of a throat. He was very still back there. I became aware of that stillness the way you become aware of a smell, gradually and then all at once. About 2 minutes later, I saw the other person. There was a Shell station coming up on the right, closed. The pumps dark, the overhead fluorescents burned out or shut down for the night. A man was standing at the edge of the lot near the road. Jeans, gray hoodie, hood up in the rain, not looking at his phone, not waiting under the overhang out of the weather, just standing in the rain, facing the direction we were coming from, like he'd known we were going to pass. As I passed the lot, Marcus said, "Stop here." I pulled in. The asphalt was cracked, weeds pushing through the edges. There was a chain across the entrance to the service bay, thick, yellow, with a padlock. It looked new compared to everything else at that station. I noticed that. This isn't the drop-off, I said. I know, Marcus said. My friend needs a ride too. That's when the door opened and the second man got in. No one had updated the app. No second rider had been added to the order. He just got in, rear driver's side, and closed the door. Now there were two of them behind me. The new man didn't say anything. He was bigger than Marcus, broader through the shoulders. He had a gym bag on his lap and he kept both hands on top of it, one over the other, like something he didn't want to put down. He smelled like rain and like he'd been standing outside for longer than a few minutes. I could feel the cold coming off him from the front seat. I looked at the app, one passenger, one fare, one pickup. The second man was not on my screen anywhere. I turned around in my seat. I can't take an unregistered passenger, I said. It's against the terms. It's a liability issue. He needs his own account. Marcus was still on his phone. It's fine, he said. It's not fine, I said. Neither of them responded. That was when the second man looked at me. Flat in the eyes, no expression. He didn't look angry. He didn't look nervous. He looked like someone waiting for a bus, like I was a minor inconvenience that would resolve itself. His face was completely neutral, not the neutral of a tired man, but the neutral of a man who had decided not to perform anything for my benefit. I held his gaze for maybe 2 seconds, then I turned back around. My hands were on the wheel. I was thinking. The app was still showing Henley Mill Cut, dead-end county road, no streetlights on the map, 20 minutes from where I was sitting. I thought about what was at the end of a road like that at midnight in late October. Trees, no houses the app could name, just a pin sitting in the dark. My stomach went cold and settled there. I put the car in drive. Then I turned right instead of left, back toward US 78. Wrong way, Marcus said. I know, I said. I need gas. That was a lie and I think they knew it, but I said it in a flat voice and kept driving. There was a chevron about a mile up on US 78 when I'd passed on the way out. 24-hour station, lit up hard, a couple cars at the pumps, a semi idling at the far end of the lot. I drove toward the light like it was the only thing on the road. I pulled in under the canopy and stopped at a pump and cut the engine. "I'm not going to that address," I said. I kept my voice even. "I'm ending the ride here. The app will charge you for what's on the meter. You can request another driver from here." Silence. Then Marcus said, "You're making this into something it's not." "Maybe," I said. "Get out, please." Neither of them moved for about 10 seconds. I have never wanted 10 seconds to end as badly as I wanted those 10 seconds to end. I kept my eyes forward. I could see the attendant through the station window, half watching a monitor behind the counter. I thought about whether I could get to that door before anything happened. Then I stopped finishing that thought. Then the second man opened his door and got out. He walked to the edge of the canopy and stood there in the rain with his bag, both hands back on top of it, same position as before. Marcus got out last. He stood by the rear door and looked at me through the window. He looked calm. He looked like a man who had done this before and was mildly annoyed at the variation. Not angry, not threatening in any visible way, just noting it. He didn't say anything. He walked over to where the other man was standing. I ended the ride on the app and pulled to the far end of the lot, away from them, and sat there with the doors locked and the engine running. I could see them in my mirror. They were standing together, talking low. After a few minutes, a car pulled in off us 78, an older white Camry, no rideshare decal, and they both got in and it left. I sat there a while longer. The semi was still idling. The attendant was still at his monitor. The rain was still coming down. Everything looked exactly like a normal night. None of it felt like one. I called Lyft support from that parking lot. I told them about the unregistered passenger, the changing destinations, the dead-end county road. The woman on the line was polite. She said she'd flag the account and someone would review it. That was the whole response, flag and review. I drove home. I couldn't sleep. Around 6 in the morning, I went back into the app and looked at the ride record. Marcus's account was still active, 4.7 stars, 80-something rides completed. I emailed support again and asked specifically about the account. A day later, they told me it had been deactivated for a terms violation. That was all the detail they gave me. About 2 weeks after that, I was in a Facebook group for Atlanta area rideshare drivers. Someone posted that they'd had a strange experience with a passenger, different account name, but the same description. Man in his late 20s. Second unregistered pickup at a stop along the route. Destination that kept updating toward a rural address, this time out past Lithonia. That driver had also ended the ride early. He was shaken up and didn't know what to do. I responded and told him what I'd done. I told him to call the non-emergency police line and report the account name. He said he would. I never found out what they were doing. I don't know if Marcus was the real account holder or if someone else's credentials were being used. I don't know what was in the gym bag. I don't know what was at the end of Henley Mill Cut. What I do know is that the flatness in the second man's eyes wasn't anger and it wasn't nerves. It was patience. Like wherever they needed to end up, they had time, and I was just one attempt in what might have been a long evening of attempts. I stopped driving at night after that, did a few months of daytime airport runs, then quit the platform entirely. The extra money wasn't worth recalibrating what normal felt like. I still use rideshare sometimes on the passenger side now. Every time I get in, I check the plate against the app before I open the door. Every time. It takes maybe 4 seconds. It costs nothing. I don't know why I didn't do it every time before.